محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. My name is Qasim Saghir, and I welcome you to today's session titled Wellness, Spirituality, and the Family by Samahat Sayyid Samir Ali. This evening's talk will focus on a very important subject, wellness and the family. It will be focusing on mental health from a practical and spiritual perspective and examining some of the cultural stigmas about the awareness of mental health. To help us better understand this important subject, we are honored to be joined by Sayyid Samir Ali. Originally hailing from New Jersey, Sayyid Samir is a veteran of the Islamic Hawza of Qom. He holds a MA in the Humanities from Stanford University and currently serves as a chaplain at the University of Milwaukee. Please help me welcome Sayyid Samir Ali with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين وهو خير الناصر المعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد
اللهم salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
ومن مؤمنات السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. So this short discussion that we will have, and at the end I want to have more room for discussion and also to hear from you, is basically, as the Brother Qasim said, it's about wellness and spirituality and the family. So there are these three different things that we have, which are very important. This topic or this discussion was chosen, and this came about when I was speaking to some of the community members we have in Chicago or in Wisconsin, where I am, about the importance of mental health, about recognizing how and when we need help, and how it is that we can be mentally well. At the same time, spirituality is also very important in our lives as Muslims living in this postmodern world, to be spiritual, to have connection to our religion, to follow the teachings of our blessed religion. So that's another aspect. And then the third aspect that we are focused on during this conference is the family and return to the family. So how is it that the family can be a tool, the family can be a basis for achieving that mental wellness and that spiritual wellness together again. So these are three different aspects of some of the things that I want to share with you and talk with you about today. And inshallah, we can take away from this some of these things that can benefit us and also our communities. So why the family, right? This is an important question. Why are we focused on the family and not on the individual? Why are we focused on the family and not on just us, as we wear different hats? We are family members. Some of us have partners. We're married. We're all children of somebody. We have other familial relations and obligations that are important to us. But why the family? Because the family is the basic and a very important tool in Islam of building both the individual and the society. So the family comes in because the family is a way to provide all kinds of wellness and improvement. Why is it that we have in this hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
Salli ala Muhammad.
he said, whoever marries, whatever person is married, then their prayer is 70 times better, for example. Or the best of you are those who are best of you to your families. Or he had to say that the people who are not blessed are those who choose to be single when they had the opportunity not to be single anymore. So these are all different teachings that we have in Islam about the importance of the family. The family is a unit where, and when we say family, ideally, we all think about, a father, a mother, children, the relationship between parents and children. I want you to think more than that, because I know that many of us have these extended family members. Maybe there's a cousin we are close to. Maybe there's a cousin we are close to who is closer to us than our own sibling. Rubba gharibin aqrabu minal qarib. Maybe there's someone who is in your family who's not very closely related by blood, but you are closer to that person. in terms of your relationship, in terms of you talking to them, in terms of you sharing how you are feeling and how you are doing with them. So when we say family today, think of a larger unit where grandparents are included, cousins are included, uncles and aunts, and how you look at yourself in that family system, how you look at yourself being part of that greater family. So that's what you should be thinking about, and not just that immediate family that we really think about when we think about the family. And why wellness? Because mental wellness, mental health, our emotional health, these are all very important ways of being well. When the topic was decided for this conference, a return to family, the idea was that the family is a way through which we can achieve this different kinds of perfection, different kinds of completion. And we focus on our spirituality, which is very important. That is why we are here, and alhamdulillah, we get the benefit of praying together in Jama'ah with so many people together. All the prayers we pray together. That is spiritual wellness. There's also social connections that we are making here, all of us from different places, from different cities. And I think that another aspect that we cannot ignore is mental wellness and mental health, which is also very important. Let us try to define wellness and mental health. What is it that we are really trying to become aware of, or we're trying to bring ourselves the attention of? Two. I think we lost the... Did we lose the feed, brother? Risala salawat, please.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Give me 1 second.
ثانية على حب الزهراء.
There we go. And we're back. So, okay. So, defining mental wellness and mental health, there's two aspects. One is the clinical aspect. Alhamdulillah, I know, mashallah, some of you here that I've been speaking to today and earlier are in the medical field. So there is a clinical definition. There is a medical definition. And then there's a spiritual definition. You say, well, why do we have these two different definitions? Why can't we just have one? Because classically, or the way Islam was, is that both medicine and religion were together. You know, in the pre-modern time, before everything became specialized and separated, you would go to that person, that same person who would be the leading scholar, alim or alima, male or female in your community, would also be someone who can prescribe medicine and be trained in the medical field. People were specialists and generalists. But now you have someone who is from the Hawza, a man or woman who goes, a believing person who goes to the Hawza to study. They have the spiritual education. And then you have someone who goes to medical school. It's been separated. That is why we're having these two separate definitions. But really the goal of both of them for us now is the same, which is achieving wellness. So clinically or medically, according to the World Health Organization, when you talk about mental health, is these daily practices which share the common goal for optimal functioning. So things that you do every single day that you can cope with stress, you can work productively, and you can contribute to society. So every human being, if you look around the room, we come from different generations here. We have more people who are, for example, let's say of the new generation, young generation, because this millennial generation is the largest generation that we have in terms of numbers. Everyone has different abilities, different gifts, and we have to have a way of coping with the stress that comes in our everyday life. And we can work productively in a way that is contributing, making meaning for ourselves, providing space to do the things that we want to do and the things that we feel will help others, will help society, and we can contribute to society and find our place amongst the larger world. That really is the definition of being well. So if someone cannot do that, if someone cannot find a place to realize their abilities because of internal reasons from themselves, that something has happened to them emotionally or mentally, or someone has done something to them, people have suffered trauma or abuse, then that hinders that ability of that person, that restricts that ability of that person, right? And then they need to, or they can find these tools to realize their full potential and get help for the mental health. So this definition, I hope you are able to understand a simple definition that we have about wellness. Spiritually, what is being present and being mentally well is that an ability to be present during the performance of daily and seasonal religious duties, right? For our daily prayers that we have, that are wajib on every adult, man and woman. For the performance of hijab, which is wajib on men and women, the concept of hijab, and the practical wearing of the clothes, for example. Seasonal religious duties is like month of Ramadan, for example. The spiritual ability to fast, the spiritual strength to fast, right? That nothing is stopping us mentally and emotionally from engaging in these duties that we have. And then to access tools for coping with everyday stress. Everyday stress that we have from school or we have from work, the ability to be able to cope and deal with those things. To find meaning in spiritual and religious activities as individuals, when you make dua, for example, as family members, as part of the family, and in the community. To find yourselves connected. Like when you come here, some of us, I was speaking to earlier on today, one brother, mashallah, he said this is his 16th or 17th year coming with his family to this conference, and he goes to other places as well. Why? Because spiritually he finds a connection with his family. He says, my family enjoys coming and attending with other people. So mental wellness is the ability to find these tools and to access them, and then if there's something that is stopping or hindering or something that needs to be clarified, something that needs to be cleared, and help needs to be taken and needs to be received from an internal or outside source, then that is moving toward mental wellness and mental health. So this is our basic definition, inshallah. Let's talk about Muslims in America and Canada today, right? And all these statistics that I'm giving you, I have sources cited at the end. These are not just numbers that I pulled out of a hat, but these are numbers that I have statistics and research behind them, different sources. In schools today, be that middle school, high school, anywhere else, in the university as well, 42% of Muslim youth and teens have experienced bullying based on their faith. That apparently is 3 times the average for any other religious group. 3 times the average. So when you talk about the young generation group amongst the Muslims, the sister wears hijab, the Muslim children are eating halal or do not eat the meat at the school cafeteria if they go to public school, for example. All those experiences, they have faced bullying. 42% of them have experienced bullying for their faith. They have experienced this bullying because of the practice of their faith. That might be in addition to being from a different ethnic group or belonging to a different cultural community and so on. So as a family, we have to be aware of those experiences that the new generation or this generation has in their schools. Sometimes the parents might be from another place and they might not have gone to public school. Or even if they did, their zaman and their time might be different than what their children are experiencing now. In a post-9/11 world, and now we can say in a post-Muslim ban world, things have changed and they're changing very quickly and very rapidly. So we have to be aware of the challenges that are affecting the mental health of those who are, let's say, in high school and even in college campuses. There are things that happen that people are bullied or people are bullied based on the apparent appearance of their name or how they look like. So that is affecting the children. Second thing for another generation is the political rhetoric and the legislation that we have, right? The Muslim ban that is in effect today has created a feeling of being unwanted, has created a feeling of being a foreigner or other amongst Muslims of all generations. I think this thing has affected many different people from different backgrounds because it's a phenomenon that's happened. I'm talking about this legislation, that when it has happened locally in the country, then those who live here, they feel, oh, what is wrong with our faith, or why is our faith being persecuted? Why are we being persecuted or excluded from being part of this country based on our faith? And if they have families in different countries outside that may or may not be affected by this Muslim ban, they have this kind of feeling of being unwanted, of not being part of the culture, or not being part of the country, or not being part of the nationalistic, or being part of the nation. So this also has an effect on mental health and well-being for the population. These are some of the stress factors. At the same time, immigration and refugee populations are large. Apparently, according to Pew, 75% of the Muslim growth that is happening in North America is coming from immigrants and refugees. So Muslims continue to be one of the largest immigrant populations in this country, which is interesting, right? And this adds to the Muslim population. So those who are immigrants, when they come and they face any kind of discrimination, any kind of Islamophobia, any kind of xenophobia, and discrimination against women in general, and especially those who express their faith by wearing hijab, all those factors are those that cause stress and those that have a bearing on mental health. They have an adverse effect on our mental well-being. That is simply what we are saying. And the first step of acknowledging the fact that this has a stress factor is to look at it and say, where you live and how you interact with the people around you is extremely important. And how those people around you, wherever that is, in Chicago, in Dearborn, in Wisconsin, in California, wherever we are going back to our homes, we know and we are aware that these stress factors exist. And people are out there with a negative image of Islam, and when they have that negative image of Islam, we have these conversations, right? Oh, how do we improve people's image of Islam? I agree with you that it should be a priority. And we are doing this. One of the brothers, he's present with us here, he was telling me how he's engaged with the Catholics in his community, and he's trying to educate them about Islam, and how, the concept of Mary in Islam, in our school of thought, and in Catholicism is a talking point. I agree with all of those things. Those are very important things. But the second part of that question is, when there is somebody, when there is a person who does not have the best things to say about Islam, and they interact with you. They interact with a Muslim family walking on the street, and a lady is wearing hijab, for example. Or they say something to you in person or online. When these things happen, how is that affecting us and our family members? We have to acknowledge that too. We can't paint a rosy picture and say, oh, we are the victims and it's our fault that people don't understand Islam. That's okay, you're doing the best that you're doing. You're not going to convince everybody. Not everyone is going to stand on the line and say, oh, Islam is the best religion and a good religion, and you people are not all the things that the media is calling you. So when that person reacts, when that person says something or acts in a way that causes us to feel unwanted, or causes us to feel like the others, or causes us to feel like a minority that's being unwanted, how do we deal with that then? That is the question. So there's two sides to that conversation about Islamophobia and xenophobia and improving the perception and image of Islam. There's two sides to that. One is actively doing it, and at the second time being aware of what are the negative effects that when someone actually comes out and says these things. Recite a salawat, please.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
The Muslim family in particular is a certain type of family that's out there. It's unique, and it has its own rules, it has its own features and characteristics, and it's important to recognize that. This ma'rifah we should have is about our Muslim families. It might be something that you already know, but it's something that I'm trying to bring a little bit of awareness to, right? Why is the family life emphasized in Islam? Why? It is because the responsibilities of parents and the duties of the children are a way in which we can reach taqarrub and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second thing is the family is supposed to be and should be, and again, as I said at the beginning, family don't just think of parents and children, think of the extended family, think of cousins and aunts and uncles and everyone else who you interact with. That is supposed to be a place where we can be safe, where we can be vulnerable, where we can share our experiences that we have as Muslims. Maybe someone said something good about Islam outside, and the child heard it in school, and they brought it back and said, my teacher said something nice to me for my hijab, for example. You bring that back to the family. At the same time, a place, and this doesn't happen enough, where we can share our vulnerabilities, where we can share those stress things that we received outside. And we can have a place to find the tools to find help and help each other. Right? These things are not as common as they should be because of generations. Because of generations. There's a generation. There's a generation and there's a culture, sadly, that does not want to speak of anything negative. When they sit at the family table, don't talk about anything negative that happened in your day. I don't want to hear it. I had a long day at work. I'm not talking about just the parents. We don't bring out those kind of things that have made us feel weak or vulnerable or unwanted during our experience outside the house. Outside the house or online or whatever it is. So the family is supposed to be that space where we encourage each other and share our experience with each other and try to وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, help each other on being pious and finding strength through the experiences that you have had. Divorce rates are generally, now this is not, the Muslims are not immune from it, but divorce rates are generally lower. They're supposed to be lower according to the statistics in Muslim families. That means that a marriage, and why I bring that up is marriage is only one dimension of the Muslim family, is supposed to be a sacred institution where these partners can find comfort, as the Quran says, and rahmah and mercy amongst each other. It is supposed to be a place where, again, those difficulties faced outside as Muslims, because of our faith and identity, we can share resources and encourage each other to find mental wellness and mental health. That is supposed to be one aspect of marriage. That is supposed to be an aspect of a healthy and successful marriage, inshallah. Why is marriage encouraged early in life for Muslims? If you look at some of the research, I think in the 60s in America, the average age for marriage was 21 or 22. And by 2010, that age is 29. So in those years, 50 years, the average age when people are getting married in this country went from 22 to 29. We as Muslims living in North America are not immune. You see the same thing in our communities. People that used to get married earlier now are late 20s, early 30s is actually a common average age. Why are we encouraged to marry early in life? Because Islam recognizes that going through university, going through college, going through that professional training is not easy. And it will help you to find a partner, to have a partner who can make that journey with you, and to find that extended support system. So marriage, not just talking about from the concept of fiqh and the concept of your prayers being rewarded and spirituality. It's also an aspect of mental health and wellness, that you have someone that can share in that journey with you. Is that journey going to be a beautiful, perfect journey with no ups and downs? No, it's not. Is that journey going to be a journey with no bumps in the road? Absolutely not. So we are supposed to be vulnerable and caring and understanding of each other's struggles mentally and emotionally. That is one of the aspects of marriage. And that is why Islam is encouraging marriage early in life, so that you have this partner with which you can be well together emotionally and mentally. You can find coping mechanisms, and whatever stress you get from your struggles, you're able to share that with this person. That is one of the aspects of marriage. In Europe especially, the Muslim fertility rate is much higher, and globally also. That means Muslims have more children than other community groups, especially in Europe now. So the next 30 years, there are some European countries that will have like 20% or 30% Muslim populations. Why do I bring that up? Because Muslims are having more children, larger families. Again, that is supposed to be a support system for each other. One of the ulama, he said, someone asked him, he said, how many children should we have? Should we worry about economic factors? Should we worry about our jobs and where we live? He said, no, worry about how much good and khair and wellness can you give them and they can give you. Because, for example, we're talking about family life. You know, after marriage, if you talk about children, then how much can the parents be involved in the mental wellness of their children? Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, recite salawat please. He said, a man came to him and he said, I've had a daughter. And the Imam said, what did you name her? He said, I named her Fatima. And the Imam became very happy. He said, be very careful. Do not strike her and do not curse her, because her name is Fatima. Be very respectful of her because of her name. Now, that is all the hadiths that we have. But does that mean that if anyone is named Fatima, magically they become the best person? They become a perfection without the need to be corrected and taught? No, it doesn't mean that. That's not what the Imam is saying, that it's a magical word that will open all kinds of doors. It is a blessed name, no doubt. It is very deeply connected to creation and to our belief. But the Imam is saying, be more careful about her wellness, about what type of time and energy you invest into your child, whose name you have kept Fatima. Be more careful that you are giving her those tools that she needs, for example, to deal and cope with the challenges that she is facing in her life. Don't be ignorant about that. So it is not the responsibility of the parent simply to worry about the economic or the educational side of the children. No. It is also their responsibility to worry about the mental and emotional needs of the children. That is extremely important. And spiritually, the Muslim family bonds together at times of prayer and fasting and giving sadaqah together. And here, when I say family here, it means, again, the extended family. There are things we learn from our grandparents. These are things we learn from our uncles and aunts. and nephews and nieces all together. They come together. We come together as a family, because then we can learn, that we can share, we can emotionally share our experiences that we have had and find strength and support in each other, which is a very important part of our family life. Risala salawat, please. Okay, now we talked about the family and everyone is living in a perfect family when there's no conflict and no one is arguing with each other and there's no stressors. No, that's not true. But when we live in this family circle and we are working on these different relationships that we have, there comes a time when we realize that we need some kind of help, some kind of professional help about anxiety, about depression, about any kind of other mental illness that might be out there, or any kind of wellness help. Why is it, and what stops us from getting this mental help, this help for our mental wellness? First thing is, one factor is poor understanding and lack of awareness. Know this, like you know about your body, like someone who works, mashallah, we have many people in the medical field. Someone who works in the medical field, they know the signs of a stroke, correct? They know the signs of cardiac arrest, correct? They know the signs of high blood pressure. Am I right? Everyone has these medications. The same thing, know the signs of anxiety. What causes anxiety? For example, if something stressful is going on. What causes depression if something is going on? Are some of these mental illnesses genetic, or if you have it in your family, are you more predisposed? Yes, you are. Have that awareness about these mental illnesses and conditions. Some of them might be long-term, some of them might be short-term, but they're there. Know them first, get that education first, just as you get education about your insurance, about your medical bill, about the doctors, you have to have the same kind of awareness about mental illness. Second thing is, we have this stigma in our culture that everything should be perfect externally. Everything should look good. No one should know what's going on. Of course, there's a difference between privacy and abandoning the need. Everyone has the right to privacy, no doubt. But at the same time, when you keep that privacy within the house of what's going on, don't let that stigma and fear keep that illness hidden. If you recognize any kind of stress or anxiety or anything within a family member, talk to them privately. Talk to them quietly. Tell them they can go get help in a certain way. People who don't want to talk about their business because someone might be nosy. That's fine. Privacy should be respected. At the same time, that shouldn't stop us from going and getting the help that we need and keeping this as a stigma. Third thing is, it's overwhelming to navigate this world. We don't know the difference between a therapist and a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Who is this person? Can they help me? Or do they know anything about my culture? Do they know anything about Islam? There are many resources now, and the resources keep growing and growing and growing. So we have, once we understand let's talk about anxiety, for example. And we want to go get help, now we don't know where to go get help. Where do we go? Who do I call? That's another obstacle, right? And once we even find a name and look someone up who might be a therapist, for example, we are very uncomfortable because we don't know if that person is going to understand. And this is a very valid conception. If a sister is in hijab and she's facing some challenges at work and someone is being very rude and mean to her, and she has anxiety about facing this person, if she wants to go get help and talk to a therapist, she is concerned because she might think, does that therapist really know what my experience is or not? Does that mental health professional know? Or is that mental health professional able to help me? That's a valid question, but that shouldn't stop someone from going and investigating and trying to find a professional who is appropriately trained and knows how to help. These resources are there, and I'll talk about them a little bit, and they're available. So don't let that prevent you and stop you from going out there. And then there are different stressors that can be based in generational differences, different aspects of family. All these things are preventing us and becoming obstacles to going and finding help for our mental wellness and for our strength. Ustaz Salawat, please. One important thing is to encourage mental wellness in the family. This is a duty. This is something that we should do. So there are mental health professionals. There are centers now, like the Khalil Center, for example, which is in Chicago, in Toronto, I think it's in Texas, it's in LA, it's in California, which is Muslim mental health professionals. There's the Family and Youth Institute, which is there. There's a lot of things available online which are tools for mental health and wellness for Muslims by Muslims, so that those people who want to go and seek help, they have these resources. There are religious counselors, mental health counselors available, who might be able to understand your experience coming from a certain religious background, for example. Right? This is growing out there, so don't let it stop us from going and searching and becoming aware when we see the signs of depression or anxiety or such other things, going in, being able to find these tools and finding these health professionals. And if they're not there, then you can contact. Some of them are available over phone, some of them are available online. It's become real easy to go and find this kind of help. Spiritually, and I haven't talked a great deal about that spirituality, spiritually, our life as Muslims and our obligations as Muslims, I think, is structured in a way that we come together and we re-energize ourselves again and again. Some of you come from Texas, mashallah, you live in a nice and warm place. You don't live here in the Midwest, and if you live north of here like me, then it's 2 months of summer, really. The rest is just nice and gray and cold. And it gets to you. After a while, you're like, November is summer, is winter, December is winter, March is winter, May is winter. Winter of snow and winter of rain. So you get seasonally affected. You said, I need some sun. Right? Congregational prayer. That Jama'ah prayer in the middle of the day, when you are working, when you are at school, when you're doing whatever, you are at the peak of your energy at that time. Allah says, stop everything and turn toward me. Stop whatever you're doing. Go wash your face and hands. Stand on a simple mat and face my house and remember me. That is very deliberate. You are not just performing a duty and a check. You check the box. Salat done, Zuhr done, next. No, it is not a chore. It is a presence with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, prayer really is one of the things I think is one of the strongest coping mechanisms for our mental health and wellness. It's very important that in the middle of the day, you enter a space that is completely otherworldly, that is connecting to the creator of the heavens and the earth. And you connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you can do it in Jama'ah, even better. One of the things some of the brothers were sharing that they look forward to is coming home from a long day of work and praying that Maghrib and Isha prayer with the family at home, in Jama'ah together. One brother was talking to me about that at lunch. Those are the things that provide the coping mechanisms. Learn to pray for each other and teach the children how to pray, how to do dua. I'm not just talking about the wajib prayers, which are very important, also how to make dua for each other. That is also an art. That is also something that we have in Islam. That is also a coping mechanism that we have in Islam. How to make dua for each other, for example. Right. All these things in Islam. Connecting with blood relatives, visiting your arham, those who are connected to you. These are also important things are spiritual tools that you're doing to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Visiting the mu'mineen. Don't make these just casual things that you do. Do these with the spiritual intention of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that will provide a coping mechanism that you need to reduce the stress that you get from your everyday, and to open those spiritual doors for you which you need hand in hand with other things to improve your mental health and wellness. Right? Ziyarah trips have become so easy now. It's become so easy to go on a ziyarah to different places now. The cost is minimal. People, instead of saving up for their Disneyland vacations, can go to ziyarah somewhere, to the holy places. That's another tool that we can invest in. You will have to invest in these spiritual tools to help encourage mental wellness and well-being in the family. Right? Islam says to us, not just, you see, when we talk about halal, we say which restaurant is halal, which meat is zabiha, and we stop there. Why do we stop there? Allah doesn't say that in the Quran. Kulu minat tayyibat, eat from the good things, not just the halal things. Eat from the good things that are good for you. I know baklava is halal. Am I going to eat it every single day? Is it good for me? No, it's not good for me. I know that chicken is halal. Should I eat it every single day? No. There's a difference between halal and what is healthy and good for you. So you have to navigate both things. Tayyibat, those things that are good for you. All the actions of the Imams of the Ahlul Bayt, alayhimus salam, recite salawat please. Regular exercise is part of the life of the Ahlul Bayt. Working out in the fields is what the Imams did with their family members. We don't. We ignore all these spiritual tools that are simply available to us, and we don't use them to cope with and improve our mental wellness. Right? If there's conflict within the family, then we find a spiritual and a religious professional who's trained in conflict resolution, who can be able to help you resolve these conflicts and remove those factors that do stress. And having empathy and understanding for each other. This is also important. All these actions that I mentioned here come back to this last thing, which is being versus doing. Everyone say it with me. Being versus doing. You gotta be, not just do. Islam is saying you must have the malaka and the dhat, you must have the action. Let it be part of you that you enjoy fasting in the month of Ramadan. That, this conversation happens when month of Ramadan comes. It's difficult for us. It's very difficult. Now the days are getting shorter, for example, it's getting cooler. But when it was in July and August, very hard. Because you're doing that fasting, you're not eating. But after a few days, it becomes part of you, correct? You start feeling that spirituality. You start feeling that imsak. You start feeling that connection to Allah. You say, okay, I just need my sleep. I'm okay with no food and water. Because it becomes part of your being. So again, any of these tools that we have, any of these things that we have should be part of who we are as our being, as our thought, as our essence, and not just external things that we do, like especially prayer. And when we enter that space with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we truly enter that space fully present in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fully present. That is the most important thing. It's not something that we just repeat. We do it all the time, but it reflects something much more deeper than just the movement of our limbs and actions. That really is a tool spiritually that we have to achieve mental wellness. Recite salawat, please. And really, I want to open this up to hear from you any experiences, any ideas, any thoughts on this topic that you have. Any resources you want to share?
I do independent study.
Okay.
And one of the areas I try to stay up to date on is anti-Muslim bigotry, racism, propaganda of which we all know there is no shortage. And I think one of them has snuck into your presentation. I want to identify. I will read it so we can all hear it. Muslim fertility rate is usually higher than average, in parentheses, Europe and Asia. Number one, fertility does not have a religion. When we use the term Muslim fertility, it replicates what the fascists are spreading online and elsewhere. They are claiming that Muslims are popping out babies to overtake our countries. This is a lie. It's a categorical lie. And what's dangerous about it is implicitly it targets Muslim women because they are held responsible for this. So even if we were going to talk about that, I would suggest rewording it. Fertility rates among Muslims is higher than average. However, I categorically deny that also. I would like to see your research. And there are organizations in Europe and in the US who are producing false research papers. The reason the Muslim population in the US and in Europe, not just now, but over the last 100 to 200 years has been increasing is white, Western, Judeo-Christian colonialism. And we know recently, like in Syria and other Muslim countries, inevitably, and even though they don't want it, many refugees end up in the Western world. So that fabrication serves two purposes. It's designed to increase the anxiety of uninformed general public in the Western world against Muslims and to cover up the truth that that increase in the Muslim population is a result of the crimes and atrocities being perpetrated by the Western powers.
Right.
I'll let it rest there.
Thank you. I think this is an important distinction that, so what I found online was that the refugee population is about 75%. The immigrant and refugee population, or those born outside the US, form about 75% of the Muslim population in North America. Certainly, the political side to the refugee presence, I agree with you, is colonialism, is global exploitation of resources, is, wars that are illegitimate wars against, in Muslim countries. There's no denying that. Certainly, I agree with you. At the same time, the reason I brought this up about fertility rates amongst Muslims is usually higher than average. I did not find that statistics for North America. That's why I didn't include that there. I did certainly find that among some journals that I can share with you in Europe. Certainly, not just all over Europe, but in particular countries in Europe, that the Europeans are not having, on average, the same amount of children as Muslims do. And certainly this was not meant to target anyone, and it certainly doesn't increase anxiety. But the reason I was bringing that up is because family life, and in general, family being a tool for providing wellness for each other, is important for us. And we focus so much amongst all Muslim groups on the importance and the centrality of family. These are one of the things that it is indicating in Europe. That might change. This data might change in 10 years. I don't know. But this stands out of, I think the research was done in 2017. So that's what we have. Thank you.
I'm so glad that you incorporated the clinical factor with the spiritual factor when you spoke about wellness and spirituality, wellness in general. But I've heard argument both ways. It's like, okay, if we talk about clinical is how we carry ourselves as Muslims, and Islam is a way of life, so you can't separate Muslim from when he is in congregational prayer as opposed to when he is practicing medicine. We're all Muslim across the walks of life, So how would you answer to somebody who says, oh, you can't be mentally ill when you are a good Muslim? Like, spirituality should conquer any clinical events that happen to you.
No, that's a very good question, sister. And everyone says, if you pray and fast properly, nothing will happen to you, and you will be completely perfect, and you will not face any problems. I think this belief, I don't know where it comes from. It's against the Quran. It's against the description of the Anbiya and the prophets in the Quran. You look at the story of Nabi Yusuf. His father expressed his sadness and anxiety over Yusuf again and again and again. All those years that his son Yusuf was in Egypt, all Yaqub is doing is crying. He's crying so much until his eyes become white, the Quran says. Look at the anxiety of Nabi Ibrahim. Not once, but not twice, but 3 times he said Allah commands him to slaughter his own son. So we see the emotional, and if we go back and read the lives of the Anbiya, we'll see the vulnerability in their lives, right? And so what that says to us is that Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created many times in the Quran, Allah describes the creation as the human being as jazu'a wa manu'a, and all these different descriptions, that a human being is hasty, human being is greedy, human being is neglectful. And the prayer and the spirituality is a way of coping with it, is a way of bringing us to perfection. But these clinical tools, as I mentioned, do not come from outside the deen, do not come from some foreign land and they're only used for the kuffar. No, we are human beings. If someone says that, then say, okay, don't take Tylenol or Advil then. Just pray and your headache will go away, right? So that is not the case. I think being vulnerable and being in need of help, be that medical or spiritual, is mentioned in the Quran again. And it goes with the theological and philosophical description of what a human being is. And one does not preclude you from the other. No, it does not. I think that we need to get ourselves well and perfect in all different aspects, and all knowledge comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
The presentation that you've given, you do have good advice on how to cope with stresses on mental health in regards to how the youth especially is being treated by our Western neighbors, whether it be in school or outside of it. A lot of us are targeted for it, and you do have some good advice on how to deal with that. However, I do think that it's not just something we should acknowledge on our end. I think it is something that should be taken care of on all sides, and that it is a bigger problem than many make it out to be. There has been some recent research stating that people who do encounter extensive bullying do end up developing symptoms of trauma and PTSD later in life. So I think that this is a much more urgent matter than people are currently making it out to be right now. And I lost my train of thought. But
I thank you for your comment. I agree with you that it is a urgent matter. That's why I'm encouraging everyone to find those resources. I'm not providing any resources right now, but I'm saying in your communities, there are resources being built across our country to cater to those needs that we have as a Muslim community. It's very important. It might be urgent in some cases more than others, but it certainly should be a part of each and every family and each or every community. Every community, every center, every masjid should have someone to provide mental wellness and health. That should be a wajib everywhere that we have.
I just had more of a commentary. I work as an adolescent mental health nurse, and I want to just emphasize the point where you said these are tools and not cures. The fact that you said congregational prayer, specifically, it's been shown that people who, when they feel a sense of belonging and social connectedness, that's really protective toward mental health. And for example, in religion and spirituality, that just helps people generate like a sense of peace and purpose in their life and generate forgiveness. People, we don't know what kind of trauma they've been through.
Yeah.
So yes, these things are tools, but they're not cures. And it's just the fact that Islam reiterates these things as ways to protect your mental health and well-being, but it's not, if somebody's gone through trauma, they do need extra treatment, and it's not something that's supposed to be, like you were saying, sister, as a cure to their mental health problems.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I'm really glad, and this is exactly what I was hoping for, that we have some professionals here who are trained in mental health. I know we have some in the medical field here, but I'm really glad that you or others like you can be resources for these kind of things in the community that they are. And it's very important to recognize both things. You know, you can't neglect the clinical and the spiritual tools, and the cure is in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but at the same time, we cannot have these obstacles that we generally see so many times in our families, in our communities. It should be something that's spoken about more.
I just want to make a brief comment about the being versus doing, because we are in a society of doing. We're always doing. We're promoted to do, produce, and continue to work hard and do. And so I've read somewhere where we are human beings and not human doings. So we need to learn how to just be and meditate and just contemplate.
Exactly. Thank you. That's very important, I think, generally in spiritual health and spirituality. And to go back to the sister's point, there is a lot of clinical research. I didn't bring it up because of lack of space, that from medical professionals, psychologists and psychoanalysts, that say that these spiritual tools like praying and doing all these things bring about an improved state of mental health and wellness, that they are tools with which we can connect and we can improve our mental health. I mean, research has been done on that, and that's present.
Why I brought the clinical versus spiritual, because I was here 3 years ago or some, I can't remember, I'm that age, many moons away, where that same subject was brought by, ironically, a person in the medical field with mental social studies background, and they spoke where somebody asked them about spirituality, and they said, oh yeah, with prayers and connectedness, you can overcome. And I had to speak up and say, where did clinical depression go? Like, we're all medical here. Most of people were there were medical. Where did you throw that away? But I want to highlight the girl who was sitting there. She brought a very good point about, you know, in addition to congregational prayer, why don't we speak up on behalf of, who's speaking up on behalf of these girls when they are bullied?
Yeah.
I know my daughter goes to university, which is very open, and she's been harassed in the last 2 years more than 6 times for her hijab, and she is being bullied. So who's speaking on behalf of these young generation?
No, it's important to be empowered in that sense, right? What we generally find in our communities is that the religious leadership in our masajid, in the centers, is male. And no matter how much I speak or advocate for a sister wearing hijab, that she should be, I'm not walking in those shoes. I can never walk in those shoes. And then empowerment needs to come from them, and it is working that way, that they find the space to express themselves, they find the space to look at the tools and resources they need to feel more comfortable expressing their identity, engaging with all kinds of attacks. When a woman in a hijab is seen, that becomes a very explosive image on all levels, on political levels, on social levels, on spiritual levels, and people have tons of questions. So the most popular or unpopular image of Islam in public is the hijab, and more ink has been spilled on the hijab than anything else. In Europe, more than anywhere else. Here, thank God, we still have our religious liberty, but in secular Europe, you know, everything is being cut and put away. So that being said, we do need that empowerment, and we do need that people to speak for themselves and make that space for themselves, because those tools are most comfortable or most available to them, and no one else can pretend to walk in their shoes. It's important.
This is, just as everyone has echoed, this is a very important topic. I just want to share my experience. You know, I've been a victim of this bullying. So I am a physician, and actually about a year ago, I moved to North Carolina to Duke University to further some of my studies in cardiology. And this is my first time experiencing bullying. Actually, you think like Duke University is a pretty well-recognized institution internationally. But over there, I was, my credentials weren't even given to me. I wasn't allowed to use their computers. They wouldn't give me any login ID. And I was put in a room with medical students, and I am a full certified physician, which it doesn't bother me, but when I see other physicians being treated that way and I'm not being treated the same, and then come to find out later the reason I was being treated that way was because I was Muslim and they didn't want me to succeed there. Just my experience on how I got through that, and you'd be surprised, Muslims who see other Muslims being mistreated or discriminated will tend to run away from you because they don't want others to identify that, hey, if I identify with her, if I stick up for her, people are going to know that I'm Muslim, and I don't want to be treated that way. That's the reality of what this world is like. So how did I get through that? You know, there is a level of, I didn't have anybody in North Carolina. I didn't know any friends. I didn't know any families. I mean, there was a very small Shia community there. So I didn't have anybody to turn to. So when you don't have anybody to turn to, at least for me, was you turn to Allah. And there's a very good hadith that Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq says that hardship brings worship. And it was a very difficult time for me. And, you know, I kept referring to the verse in the Quran that says, with hardship comes ease. And alhamdulillah, I had a very good family support. But what got me through that more was, you know, my family, when I went out to the world, they empowered me as a person. You know, you have to be empowered. And I think that comes with good family support, good social support, and good coping mechanism. And that's really crucial, is learning how to develop your own specific coping mechanisms when you're going to be discriminated or face hardship in your life. We're all going to face it. It's a matter of fact. But through hardship comes ease, and I think, you know, that experience, I'm very thankful to that because it allowed me to become stronger, better. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewarded me with something better. And I think there's just trying to have the mindset that, you know, others have it worse. And what you're doing is, when you're discriminated against, it's an opportunity, you know, to receive a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's just how I see it. But that took a while to understand. And that's my coping mechanism. And everyone has their own individual coping mechanism, but it's very crucial to develop your own coping mechanism. And how do you do that? Through your resources, but family is the most important thing, in my experience and what I've seen in my life.
Thank you, sister. I think that the important thing is, I mean, there's two different things. When I put this slide up, when I put it up initially, I said, I'm talking about finding coping mechanisms due to these things. Another aspect of this discussion, when you talk about Islamophobia, xenophobia, is how to stand up when you're being discriminated against. That's a whole different animal, and that needs to be developed too. People need to speak up for themselves, need to find the right proper ways of expressing themselves within these institutions. Doesn't matter if it's Duke, Stanford, Princeton, it doesn't matter. Discrimination, they're all human beings. People don't become angels when they go to good universities. They don't. I wish that was the case, but it's not. And you will see discrimination even worse at even higher levels and institutions in any place in the world. So we need to train ourselves on how to speak out against this Islamophobia or this xenophobia or discrimination against you or anyone else because of whatever it is. That's a whole different way, but those tools need to be developed and need to be present as well. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So my question is, how do you become a good supporter of that family member?
Good question. How do you become a good supporter when someone comes to you for support?
But I'm sorry. So sometimes when a person will come to you for support and you try to offer it,
It's taken offensively when she's trying to offer.
Yes. No, that's important. I mean, one is seeking the help. The second thing is when you offer the help or when you see weakness or vulnerability, that person may not want it. They may reject you. They may think that you are trying to hurt or harm them, right? And this might be generational as well. There's that sense, especially people coming from different cultures, that no, you're just trying to call me crazy. I'm fine. Everything's okay. So once that happens, sister, I think you can pray for them. You can pray over them. You can pray with them. You can always make yourself available to them as someone who wants to hear them and wants to help them and guide them. And it's difficult. It might put you in a position of being accused of things that are not correct, being called names, but you still have to continue, because if your niyyah is there to help this person, Allah will open that door. And maybe they will understand that later on, maybe even after you're gone from that person. So you have to do the best, and especially if it's a family member, a mu'min, then you have to act with them with ithar, with sacrifice, and just be that person who says, no, look, we can go and get this help, or we can go on a trip to this doctor and they might be able to give you medication, and you just got to keep fighting and share the tools. And it's not easy to be in that position.
I just wanted to make a quick point about, from an institutional level of racism and discrimination. In my school, I'm a university student at Temple in Philadelphia. I started an organization called the Minority Voices Project, and I'm working with the diversity board of the university to combat microaggressions, racism, and create institutional change in the university. And I think it's really important that we all recognize that allyship is very important. White allyship, members and members of our community who are working towards diversity, promoting diversity and working towards change. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement. People who are already working towards combating racism, it's important to unite with them, not only from us working together as Muslims, which is also amazing, it's a great thing, but also people who have power and status that can help us and bring forth a change in our institutions. I think that if we find like-minded people already in our settings and work towards working with them, create goals, create a way that we can combat things, either whether it be through policy, whether it be through education. I think that's really, really important. It shouldn't just be from within our own people where we kind of cope within ourselves, but it's also important to take action and make change, because we have the ability to do that. We have our education, we have empowerment, like the woman over here said, and we need to use all of these tools in order to actually make a change and not just talk about the issues we face. We need to take action towards doing that, and I encourage you all to use the spaces around you, because there are like-minded people that can help you push towards change. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. I think that's very, very important. And institutions, be that universities or other places, they certainly have these resources, and they are investing more in these resources to cater to the needs of smaller populations, diverse populations. The university I am at, I serve as a chaplain. They do have a counseling center. They do have a diversity, someone who serves that, and they do have a Muslim counselor as well for the university students. So all that is very important, and if those things, tools exist where you are, then please make use of them. If they do not, then advocate for yourself. Always this advocacy is extremely important. I think that's an important point, that these tools are available out there and you can have access to them, and it's becoming more common, which is great.
We thank you, Sayyid Samir Ali, for coming and talking about this very sensitive topic, something that must be talked about more. And I thank you, brothers and sisters, for sharing your personal stories and helping us to learn more from you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Thank you.